Welcome to my YouTube channel, Times and Places Before Abraham. My name is Jerry Beasley, and I go by Jerry. My life can best be summarized by the two things that I value the most, the Bible and science. That's probably because my father was a medical doctor and my mother graduated in engineering. I had a good home life, a good church, and good schools. My two passions led me to obtain a degree in engineering and also a degree from a Bible college. In my mind, there was no conflict between faith and science. I loved them both. During my first 5 years as a believer in junior high and high school, I grew in faith. One teaching stands out in my mind. My pastor spent a year showing how the Old Testament tabernacle prefigured the sacrifice of Jesus Christ on the cross for the sins of the world. You see, animal sacrifices were only symbolic and prophetic. God had a plan from the beginning of time to redeem us through His Son. The blood of the Lamb is a major theme from Genesis to the Revelation. This was a solid foundation that assured me that my life had purpose and got me through tough times. In college, I was confronted with many objections against the Bible. I found books in the library by European philosophers. Philosophers ask questions like, where did God come from? And where did Cain get his wife? Discussions can get deep and confusing. For a while, I followed the Christian apologist Francis Schaeffer, who had been a missionary in Switzerland. This contributed to my being a missionary in France for 16 years. Although apologetics was helpful, I became disillusioned with it because it deals with concepts and logic more than with tangible facts. About the same time, while still in college, I was confronted with teachings of human evolution. History was taught as naturalistic changes that took place over millions of years. Fortunately for me, I found books by Henry Morris, the father of creationism. He was also an engineer and a conservative Christian. He became my role model. Creation scientists had answers to most arguments, but debates were often inconclusive and confusing. While creationist arguments were valid, I was looking for a simpler and more positive way to communicate them. Since retirement, I have had more free time, and I began following discussions on biblical archeology and chronology, especially early Bronze Age history and before. That's the time between Noah and Abraham in the Bible. Issues were complicated and seemingly irresolvable, which explains why most people avoid them. Seeing a great need, I became convinced that God wanted me to commit the rest of my life to resolving these problems. Apologetics, creationism, and biblical archaeology all support the Bible. The Bible is essentially the history of God's mighty works through His people, the Jews. God is defined through the global miracles of creation, the flood, the Exodus, and the resurrection. Redemption rests upon these historic events. We might say that history is God's apologetics. I recommend this series to those who believe in Genesis as a way to strengthen your faith in God's mighty works. I also recommend it to those who are skeptical and think that Genesis is a book of myths that evolved out of superstitions. You might just see God in archaeology.